We now have dotnet installed, we have the Avalonia templates installed, and we've made and run our first application in here, just purely through command line at the minute, so the terminal. Next up, we want to get some IDE, so an integrated development environment, and this is really up to your preference. So if we open up Safari, we can use, say, Visual Studio Code, we can use Visual Studio, and we can use Rider. So we're going to just do all three, and you can see the difference. My personal preference is Rider. I think once you've used Rider, you kind of like the UI more than the Visual Studios, and I find it very hard to go backwards. So we'll just drag and drop Visual Studio Code into here. We'll just type in Visual Studio Community Edition next, which is the free edition of the full Visual Studio Code. That should give us a link to downloads here. And again, it's pretty simple. Just click your specific download. Visual Studio is going to take a while. That's decided it's downloaded a Windows version. Did I misinterpret, or did it just not correctly identify? And that will be why Visual Studio for Mac was officially retired in 2024. That's why we can't find it. So I guess they're kind of pushing the Visual Studio code. If you did want to use Visual Studio, the full edition though, and you're on Windows, you pretty much install Visual Studio and then go to the marketplace and add the extension called Avalonia. So with that, we will go to Rider for the last part, and we'll download this as well. And while Rider's installing, let's just open up Visual Studio Code. And similar for all three of these, we're going to have to install an extension. I believe Rider comes with it baked in. I might be wrong. But for Visual Studio Code, at least, we need to go to the extensions here and type in Avalonia. And then you can see here, Avalonia, make sure it's by the Avalonia team. Click Install. Trust. And now that's installed, it doesn't necessarily tell us to restart, but I'm going to purposely close down and restart. And let's also see if Visual Studio Code now has picked up to open up our project by double clicking. It doesn't look like it. Nope. And we can see in the Explorer, we now have a Create Avalonia project, so that's the template running. Let's try and open a folder and open the test app, and let's see if it's smart enough to detect. There we go, it's just permissions based by the looks of it. Trust everything, and it's now picked up. Agree to the Avalonia license, bring that down, and then do we have a run? Doesn't appear to be very well integrated, if I'm honest. Let's open up the project directly instead. Nope, failure there as well. So let's instead just use the Explorer again, and we're going to have to close this down. We'll start by getting Rider up and running, so we'll start the install off because this might take a little while. Oh, and I forgot Mac is pretty much a drag and drop system, so this isn't going to take a while. And then while that's installing or copying over, let's restart in here. And let's try and create an Avalonia project this way. So let's see what it does. We'll make a normal app again. We'll just call it test. I'm just more curious to see what's going to happen here. We'll create it on the desktop. And you can see project test created, open. So let's see what it now does. Trust this, and yes. Not the most impressed with Visual Studio Code. There's no way to quickly run the project. Yes, we can see the code here, but it's also not picking up this. So I'm not even going to bother to try and work around this. This is pretty much Visual Studio Code for you. This is a bunch of add-ins, and I've never really liked Visual Studio Code. It's kind of all hashed together with extensions everywhere. You can see we've got the preview here, but we don't have a nice, easy way to build and run. I wouldn't really recommend Visual Studio Code for anything. So instead, we could set this up and figure out why it's not even opening CS projects off a fresh build, but that's how you basically install and get ready to use it. I just wouldn't recommend it. So now for Rider, that's already been dragged and dropped into this folder. We can see it's also left these that we can eject off the desktop now. And it's made a test folder there, which we can delete, which was the one we made in Visual Studio Code. And now if we go to Rider in here, this is the one that I use for everything. And it's, again, free. You don't need to purchase anything. And it's one of the best software development environments going. So I'd highly recommend you use this on Windows, Linux, or Mac, any of them. We'll agree to the terms. We're not going to send stats. We're going to allow networking. We're going to skip import. I'm personally going to go with the rider theme. I'm going to stick with, what do I prefer? I'm going to stick with the Visual Studio keyboard shortcuts. In here, I don't want any of those, so we're going to continue without. And now we get to the start page. Go to Configure, Plugins, and let's search for Avalonia. Oh, not in there. Helps if you search the right place. Avalonia. And there we go. We have Avalonia Rider that we need to install. Restart the IDE. And then now we're good to go. So all we have to do here, we can either click open, or we should, I presume, no, we haven't associated this yet. So let's right click. Oh, it is, it's associated. So we can just double click the project now, trust it, and this all opens up. JetBrains Rider AI, not interested, which is tricky because they've only given you the let's go button, as opposed you have to click up here to not agree. So a bit tricky there to avoid that. Close that down. You can see now we have the test app opened up, and we can simply press F5 to run the project. So exactly what we want. It's going to now build it for us and run. And there we have it. So we have the IDE working nice and easy for us. And the benefits of Rider, if we minimize this, make that bigger, hide that out of the way, we can now go to, say, the main window here. Click this little icon up here to open a preview, put it to the left or rather the right, and we can see a live preview here. We can zoom in and out of the preview, make it smaller, so we can see more code, and then you can type away in here, and you can see the UI. If we zoom back in, I guess, you can see this updates live with whatever we type. So we have a nice live preview. And beyond that, basically installing whichever IDE you prefer and installing the plugin or the add-on, that's all there is to it. I just personally find Rider the most useful, most clean, most maintained IDE. So that's my personal preference. That's the one we'll use going forward. So next up, we'll end up using Rider to create a project again, but using Rider. And then we'll take a look at the anatomy of the entire project so you can fully understand what all of this code actually does.